Welcome. Hello to the Betaverse. This is BetaCodex Live, where Ryan Erickson, that's me, and Niels Pflaeging on the right side of the screen. We talk about all sorts of things that have to do with freedom at work, organizational democracy, decentralization, federalization. I'm trying to think that word, federalization, federation and decentralized structures and systems and organizations. That's stuff that we'd love to talk about as evidenced and embodied by the BetaCodex network. So that's the blurb for today. Again, I'm Ryan Erickson. It's Niels Pflaeging. The topic for today, if you are not blind, if you are, I apologize for that. It is, oh, good Lord, theory for practice, informed by an article, Niels, that you wrote pretty recently. That I was struck by and really wanted to, again, reason we're doing this because I wanted to talk about it, that the difference between common nonsense was the title. So that caught me too. So I was struck by it, and I would like to say a little bit why. I was struck by it because I'm very much into one of the guys that I hang out with and talk with a lot is Dave Fearon, who he wrote a book called Practice as a Way of Being, right? And this idea around practice being a neglected part of management, the practice of management that's not really well practiced. And then when I read the article, I was like, do I need to be I think I should question what theory am I talking about? What's the distinction between theory and practice? When does it matter? And so that spurred some of my thinking. So with that, what spurred your thinking and what came up for you, and how would you like to set the frame for our discussion today on that article?
Yeah, it's really one of the topics of my life. It has bothered me forever, that question: why is there a gap between theory and practice in our practice of organizational leadership and so on? And of course, it is maybe what I wrote in the article is not entirely, or it's not entirely new, certainly, but I try to frame it very clearly in the here and now. The disdain for theory problem, it certainly exists. It has existed forever, probably, but it is rampant, very very toxic, very stalling, in the movements that we feel associated with as beta people, in the BetaCodex network, and organizational craft and science and so on. There is a disdain for theory that cripples practice and the advancement of theory. And it's a topic that I think is not often discussed. I talk about this in the paper, because even today there's a zeitgeisty thing in this. I think even the term theory is getting a bad rep in times of these. In America, it is obvious that American public discourse, especially in America, that's why I'm highlighting it, is deviating totally from reason and academic insight. The latest Tylenol thing is an evidence, or let's say the health minister in the United States, being critical of immunization. How's it called?
Immunization, vaccines
and so on. So of course there is a zeitgeist element to it, but in our craft, or in our field, of organizational practice, organizational change, organizational development, organizational science, this disdain for theory is also rampant. So it's very simple to talk about a president who's probably insane in some ways, or at least ignoring, has no regard for scientific insight and theory. But the same kind of attitude is manifest in the lean movement, in the agile movement. And I wanted to write about this, very clearly, and put it out there that this is hindering us all. It's crippling. It's destroying. For the most recent case, I think, is the destruction of the agile movement, that I think comes from a disdain for theory. And then if you disdain theory, if you hate theory, if you despise it, if you look down on it, if you neglect, appreciation for theory, then what options do you have? Relishing tools, hyping things, fads, pseudo solutions like agile scaling, for example, which is completely void of theory. There's no theory behind it, as far as I can see. At least no decent theory. We can talk about this.
Well,
So
co-ops
yes,
it,
it's compelled to write a current piece about this, the gap. And of course, the title of our session today is a hint to Kurt Lewine's famous phrase. There's nothing as practical as good theory.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a derivation, of course, theory always is always useful for practice, and this gap between theory and practice that is so often, articulated in subtle or not so subtle ways, it's a bummer. So yeah.
Well, and that comes a lot, again, software development and that in that practice of it. That you're being so theoretical, right? Don't be so theoretical. We need to actually.
I'm more of a practical person. That was what people with a disdain for theory say, right? And I understand it. It's an emotional thing. The term theory is often confused with being academic or the academic thing, and it's not the same. It's not the same. There is academic research that is totally theoryless. By the way, this is a huge topic. We have discussed it in other opportunities. During the masterclass, for example, we discussed articles that, for example, there's this great article that we at the time discussed, what theory is not. Which one is that?
Well, there's the Ghoshal article.
The Ghoshal article, Bad Management Theory is Destroying Good Management Practice. I think that's the title of that brilliant article. Yes. Everybody can read it online. It's free of charge. Wonderful article about the theory practice thing. Connection mostly. And where did we start? Software development.
Yeah, it's software development.
Yeah, and this disdain for theory has so many facets. In the article, I talk about the nonsensical use of George Box's quote. All models are wrong, but some models are useful. It was a phrase used by George Box. Wonderful statistician for describing statistical or mathematical models. Of course, he was saying all statistical models are wrong, but some are useful. That's very accurate. Read Sumanta Ghoshal's article that you just.
I think the thing, one of the pieces that struck the distinction to be made, was in using. There's an exact sciences. You call them the exact sciences. What is the hard sciences? To use
the natural sciences.
The natural sciences, using theory and practice as descriptive kind of modes of So again, that and I think that's what Box was in when we talk about the math and the hard sciences. Using connecting theory and practice in that way, and then you say, well, in the humanities, that's a whole different bag. There's something you said that the quote that really hit me hard too was about that scientific theory in the exact sciences. This is a description. This is explanatory, and we're describing reality in that way. But theory in the humanities and behavior and those kinds of things that can change the world, can change things.
It does change. Yes, exactly. Yes.
And that comes, and what we talk about, organizational change. And I think you also talked about, I brought in Chenoweth. I'm trying to think if it was Chenoweth you brought in there, but that, Chenoweth is in today's article. Sorry. The 3.5% article. Read that one. Go to.
We will talk about that.
That'll be in the future, but yeah. So the idea of ideological and narrative and theoretical things being change agents, being forces for change in the world, as opposed to descriptive methods.
Yes. By the way, let's take an example of how theory changes the world. While you talked. A wonderful example came to my mind. I never used it before. I never talked about it before, but I'm a big fan of arts, of course. And for example, if you have ever been to an art museum, historical art, from from centuries ago or so. You see in older paintings, if you see children, they look like young adults, little adults, right? Tiny adults.
Mhm.
They don't look like children in paintings, from, I'm not even sure from which time. When our perception changed, something interesting happened. Childhood was invented.
Yes.
Theory of childhood was invented.
Mhm.
The theory, it's a theory of related to insights
Human
about
development.
development.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But also conceptually, that meant that understanding human development better helped us to understand that, oh, they are not little adults. They're really something different. They are children. So childhood was invented, which of course had important ramifications for education, for educational systems. So in a way, you couldn't invent proper childhood education without inventing childhood. These insights or theories connect. Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, today, in today's paintings, children do not look like little tiny adults, too small adults anymore. They look totally different because
The hobbits. They don't look like hobbits.
so that's in the humanities. That's
Yeah.
what theory does. It changes. Or let's take the gender discussion, which is an excellent discussion example as well. Our theory of things, or theories of things, change our world. They change our behavior, our politics, our interaction with each other, for each other.
Our self-concept.
Our
as well.
self-concept, yes. For one of my preferred examples, maybe a little bit of a difficult thing to grasp, less charming as an example than the childhood example, is race. Once we invented race as a concept, racism became possible. It wasn't possible before. That's what you see in small children. They don't know or care about race. They don't give a shit. So they do not behave racist at all. Racism is a thing that's a concept, a theory that's assimilated and
it's
learned.
Programmed either from environmental or
yes, and you cannot step back. Or the invention of God, of religion, that changes the world. So those are just examples, and there are so many interesting examples about this, where our concepts of our theory about society, in the human sciences, change the world. That's very different from physics, where the understanding a phenomenon like gravity, yes, or relativity theory doesn't change the world. The world is still the same it was before. We just can understand it better and can conclude things differently, and some things work that were fathomable, that weren't fathomable before. And that's a brilliant piece of we should mention the article again by Sumatra Ghosha, Bad Management Theories Destroy Good Management Practice. It does a brilliant job. That wonderful article, his last, he wrote, and it was published posthumously. It does this wonderful distinction between the natural sciences and the humanities, to put a simple label on it, And in the humanities, our theories change the world. So this is very important to understand why theory and practice cannot be disconnected. It's lunacy to claim that they are different, because no practical action without theory is possible.
Oof. And this, I was going to hold off on this until later, but the idea of this connection between theory and practice being a very musical thing, because there's an idea that so you got to practice, but practice without some kind of grounding in theory is this undisciplined practice. We're talking about that you can stumble. You can stop it. You can stumble upon theory. And
yes, theory is discovered in practice very often, of course, right?
Well, I think this is also an Agile thing too. It's like, oh, we've doing all this experimenting and we're just going and we're doing pilots and stuff like that. So we think this is going to work. Maybe it's going to work, and then we go and do some random thing, and if you happen to put the right pieces together just by chance, you discover something, you discover an insight, and then you call it new. You call it some kind of innovation, and then you're yes. Co-opting it, and then you're branding it, and then you're teaching it in a 2-day class or a boot camp.
Happens all the time in Agile, yes, or in Lean as well. All kinds of silly things are being taught and discovered all the time. The wheel oh my God, I invented the wheel.
Oh my gosh.
I do not call it wheel. I call it black swan. By the way, that's what this gibberish gobbledygook author has done. He's built a career on rediscovering things that are obvious. Surprises become black swans and so on. Yeah, and so that's also. I mean, in the agile scene, I think you gave a brilliant example. In the agile scene, very often we over accentuate practice so much. No, it's even wrong to put it that way. We embellish our own ignorance of theory, and subject us to the lunacy of that we have to discover everything in practice again. That's why recently, I mean, some of our listeners, the readers of my stuff, they know that I researched Toyota very intensely, the whole lean thing. History very intensely over the last 12 months from different angles, from the Deming angle, Taiichi Ono angle, and Toyota history and so on. And of course, what becomes obvious is, okay, they really had to struggle to build the theory. For example, Kanban, they kind of really developed it. There was the idea, they developed it, they figured it out. That is original research, in practice. So, and they took a decade to figure out how to make it happen everywhere. So that kind of thing, there's breakthrough innovation. Of course, it happens, but you don't have to figure it out again. You don't have to do a Kanban pilot. You should look at the theory and the practice. But mainly at the theory, and then you can decide if Kanban is something for you or other stuff. For example, decentralization. It's still not widely accepted that decentralization in complexity is theoretical. Theoretically, it's as sound as evolution.
Self-organization, same thing.
Self-organization. It's being discussed as if it was something that somebody put from a sleeve or something. It's not. We understand a lot about self-organization. Read the Tavistock anthology, and you can learn so much about. You're a great example. Yeah. So we know so much about the stuff. We don't have to do pilots or experiments around that or dabble for ages in practice. It's not. It's not the proper way of doing things once you have robust theory. That's my point, right? If we disdain the theory and aggrandize our own experience to think that it's research, we must experiment. That's insane, really, and it kills organizations.
I think that also another thing that happens is that you discover so let's say that you discover the word self-organization, and then that kind of hits you, and then you don't investigate the theoretical backing of it, and then you go and try and dabble with it. And
that's what many bloggers do, by the way.
And think you know what you're doing, and you end up just creating much more of a mess. You do more harm than good. I think this was the Deming you brought. It was Deming or Levine in there. Well, I think it was Deming. It's like, if you're just going to dabble, just stay home. Don't come in here and look around. Just
best efforts are not enough. You also need to know. You need the theory. That's very Deming-ish, and he said so. Explicitly. Everybody has best intentions, but that's not enough. You must also know and understand something.
The real best intention is to actually, if you're curious and you want to understand something, you go and do the reading, where you go and actually learn and educate yourself. And then now I'm informed. If a practice is informed by theory, this is the whole the episode, this theory for practice is using theory, embodying that theory in practice, and allow that to inform your results. The other thing, that there's this bias about experimentation. We must experiment. We must.
That's criminal. I think.
And good, and we talk about in the scientific way, in a scientific method, right? There's you do your experiments based on what? Based on some kind of theory. Hypothesis, a claim, a statement, and so now of course we're talking about the humanities instead, which is different. But you still, if you just go in, we're going to run an experiment. Let's figure it out. That, I think you said too, it's dangerous and counterproductive. To go forward without that. So
Yes. I had such a great point I wanted to make while you were talking. Now it's gone.
I distracted you.
This experimentation, that's something I talk about in the article, of course.
Yeah.
And this experimentation mess has gone too far. And the preachers of experimentation, like Gary Hamel, or in the Agile sphere, those Agile, those Lean thought leaders, for example, I hope they are unaware of their crimes, of the
you hope it's ignorance and not malevolence.
Ignorance and not evil intention.
Yeah.
Because ignoring available theory is part of ignorance, as you just said, right? It's, of course, I may not be aware, I'm not aware of many theories, right? For example, I'm reading a lot about time, and there's so much I just didn't know, and still I talk about
there are assumptions you make based on your experience.
Exactly, I make assumptions, but of course, part of the the educational process of learning is to reduce your own ignorance, and as you already mentioned, a wonderful means to do that is to read, to read books. That's why I'm sitting in front of my library, or part of my library, because theory is cheap. Really, you can come by in the age of the internet, and books, cheap books, by and large, it's so easy to put your hands on theory. However, you also must consume it. Only ignorance spreads without a cost. Education, intelligence, critical reflection, that requires hard work. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's consuming versus digesting, and consuming good information that creates a healthy body, and versus consuming calorie free or whatever, just empty calories.
By the way, let's take another example, something very that may seem rather banal. Maybe we are both acquainted with Peter Block, who wrote a wonderful world best-selling book about consulting, right?
Yes.
And this is just an example, really, of consulting. Many people say they are consultants. Many people even say that they're consultants and trainers, which always indicates that they do not possess enough theory to give themselves a name, or a job description, because those are two things so separate that in principle, you cannot do the same thing, at least not with the same client. It's impossible to be a trainer or a facilitator and a consultant at the same time, which is why it needs to be, distributed among different people. However, how do we, if you want to be a consultant, if you want to practice in consulting, you should do the fucking homework and read a few dozen books about consulting. Otherwise, it won't end. You might read Peter Block's book, or, as I always recommend, Alan Weiss's books, which don't seem high on theory. At first, they are definitely non-academic. However, there's a lot of great theory in them. So recognizing good theory, it requires some practice as well, and you have to to step in different fields. You have to also get acquainted with the theory. Otherwise, you're just a
huckster, a charlatan, a quack,
a quack. Yes, a con.
Exactly. And the idea, again, there's the distinction between training and consulting is very interesting. Also, because you bring in flawless is great, because that there's these little pithy statements that I love, that I think this one's great. So, don't try and be helpful, be useful. There's a difference between being helpful and being useful.
Sure.
That a trainer is helpful, and that I am here, I'm on the stage, I am delivering information to you, I am helping you, with this information, which is entirely different of I have this information, you have this, we have this. So how can I become useful to you so you can do the thing that you endeavor to do, and that we can partner in that. The trainer is not a partner. in that it's training in this education and schooling, if you will, it's a delivery mechanism, and as opposed to a relationship building, endeavor. So
yes, it's something very different, and of course you just start to describe the theory, the distinction between and to become conscious of one's own theories is a hard thing. That's, I think, what ultimately will lead us to not just to mastery but to wisdom. To understand your theories that you use and matter to what you're doing, and can act accordingly as well. That would be wisdom.
And to put your theories up for investigation and interrogation by other
otherwise you're just opinionating, probably, right? So yes, theory has weight, and I think yes, this disdain for theory, it's widespread in our societies, in our communities, professional communities. I've been to so many conferences in my life, as a speaker often. But I have listened into so many things that had no theory behind it, that had no reason behind it, that were really caught out of fresh air. Yes.
You put a quote in a little story here in the article. About an academic. I'll read it here. Academics are by no means free of disdain for theory. I once heard an academic vigorously declare that she wouldn't buy into any concept that a human being had developed. What?
That a single human being had developed. Exactly.
Well, single human. I replied that. Yeah.
But
how did you reply?
I replied something that I had never heard anybody reject
evolution
theory and Einstein's relativity theory in one word, in one sentence, so to speak.
What discipline was that academic involved with?
Psychology, which is of course object to a lot of quackery. Yes. It's
a lot of
tough
opinion. Yeah,
a lot of opinion, a lot of prejudice turned postulate or axiom. Lots of gobbledygook.
False axioms. Yeah, that's,
sure. Yes, it's very tough in psychology to overcome flawed notions. Yes. Well, very tough. I think it's very healthy for us. Economics, which I studied as well. It's also full of the flawed notions do not just die away like Homo economicus. I daily read on LinkedIn somebody postulating something. It's dead. Yes, but it's that theory of the Homo economicus, which is that people act out of reason and they have a list of interests that are worked down, and that within those desires and motives and so on, we act reasonably, which is total bogus, because we act emotionally as well. So Homo economicus,
we are not machines.
The theory is long obsolete. I'm not sure when it was put to the graveyard, but it must have been decades. Still, people grapple. They still talk about it, and we shouldn't. It should be, that's history. So, and the same happens in our spheres here of organizational science, organizational reality, management, leadership, and that kind of stuff, organizational development. Lots of quackery still going around. We know it's wrong, and it's still like maturity models, and those are examples.
I think it's co-opting. Someone reads a book somewhere about human development and childhood development and those kind of maybe and applies it without thinking to another discipline, without doing more reading and more research.
That's happens.
And then slaps a name on it, right?
Yes.
So, and things
sometimes esoterics come into play, like with maturity models, spiral dynamics, and so that's esoterical. Simply, it flies in the face of all behavioral sciences and learning or development, human development theory. So it's people just make up their minds, invent stuff, and it must be And even if it's rejected by most, some people will still stick to it, and it's often commercialized for decades, even if it's bogus. Yeah, and things get reborn under new names, like management by objectives got reborn as OKRs. It's still the same command and control. And it certainly doesn't work. It's against all theory. Complexity theory, for example, is enough to prove that OKRs do make no sense at all.
Yeah.
Or balanced scorecards or fixed targets or whatever you have. Yeah. So, disdain for theory is so widespread that we don't even notice these bizarre, or many people seem not to notice.
Well, I think this also comes in as I think about that, reading the article I wrote about Dunning-Kruger syndrome, or whatever that is that you fool yourself into this sense of competency based on some kind of incomplete reading that you have, and then you propose oneself as an expert, which there's a whole the death of experts. I forget what that book is, but that this proposing oneself as an expert in something that you think you have knowledge on, and then you actually don't. It's this hubris of denying that you may not know everything. Right? And said, I now know this little bit, and now I know everything about this domain, whether it's software development.
Yes.
But I think the point I was trying to make is that ignorance is not necessarily an insult. That we are all ignorant of something.
Yes.
I'm ignorant of many.
Yes, that should be the baseline of our conversation, of course. Yes. We are all ignorant of stuff and know something, or very little, ultimately. Now I lost it again. The thing. My thread that I had. Oh no, but I'm
so thrilling.
There's the other thing. If you have a certain disdain for theory, if you do not read enough, what happens? Something terrible will happen to you, to us, to anybody who has a disdain for theory. You get hypnotized by your own perception of reality, by experience, because that's the other God you can. If that becomes your only God, your own experience of reality, then nothing can save you. Yes, because then you are prey to esoterics, to hyperbole, to all kinds of schemes, to seduce you into believing anything. So it's really it's
to put it
really essential to open our hearts and minds to theory, to study it and to develop critical. You can only develop critical thinking if you believe in theory. Otherwise, it's not even possible. You cannot be critical based on your own experience. Impossible. You need.
Well, you're denying knowledge outside your own domain.
Right. Exactly.
That's the thing. I was gonna bring in something vulgar. The vulgarity is that you're just smelling your own farts. Basically, that's it.
Oh, beautiful! I love. I've never heard that. Is that
have you heard that?
No,
that's a classic. People spend their time smelling their own farts.
The fartishness of the agile scene and the lean community and so on.
Well, if you and this is something I can't take credit for.
That's totally the point. I mean, we might. I studied business sciences, and one of my hypotheses is that the business sciences closed down, built up walls towards other sciences, like psychology, sociology, philosophy, in the 1960s, around the time that McGregor published his famous book. It isolated, or many scientists did that. I think they isolated themselves from each other, and that means that there is little critical thinking inside many sciences. As well, too little critical thinking, too little theory from other domains. For example, what did I mentioned W. Edwards Deming in my article we're talking about here, and what I think was brilliant, he was a physicist and a statistician.
Statistician, yeah,
an expert statistician.
Statistical process control, I think.
A statistics dude, yes, as we would call him but also
dude, cool.
Doctor. He had a doctorate, I think, in physics, right? So. Yeah. And he said this wonderful thing that you need profound knowledge, in certain areas like psychology and statistics, and not just in business, not just in statistics, but you also need to understand psychology, and that's exactly this integrative view that we cannot. We have to explore the theories that exist out there and connect them to figure out something different. By the way, that's how we figured out time-oriented work systems and time-oriented software development, by putting things together and allowing the theory to spin your head and do something with it. Yeah.
Well, then you get right here to social technical systems. It's about integrating different theories from different places.
Very much so. Yes. I talk about STS, socio-technical systems, the movement in the article as well, because they were, I think, the last big movement in the organizational field that was anxious to connect everything. Yeah. Yes, human psychology, social psychology, systems theory and sociology, business sciences, economics, constructivism, many theories, very robust theories that were connected at the time, and the findings were amazing. About the socio-technical systems movement taught us everything about self-organization. We were referring to self-organizational theory at the time. I think they figured it out very neatly.
Large group process and all those kind
of things. Exactly. Everything you want to know about open space, they figured it out at the time. Even if they didn't figure out, the core group didn't figure out open space, but all the theory was there.
But then this also gets into a big piece of what we talk about in the BetaCodex. It's about research. I mean, you stumble upon something that's curious, and what's going on here? And then you do the research to develop a theory that you can propose and experiment based on the theory in these particular exams. Now, doing it in a social system is much different than doing it in a closed laboratory environment. Thus, the difference between the natural sciences and the social sciences.
Yes.
But that's, I think we talk about that. Harrison Owen did not say that he ever discovered open space technology. He says that he didn't discover. He kind of wandered into it. I forget the exact words, but it's this is how these folk in sub-Saharan Africa gathered together and created community and relationships together, and they got stuff done without having the CEO of life telling them exactly what to do and when to do it, so that they did it together. But then that was fed. He also read a lot of Thomas Kuhn. He read Pflaeging. He was in that domain. You were going to say,
I think for me the most powerful thing that he said about open space, but this is very personal, it's just an opinion, is the thing that he thought, if the coffee breaks are the most valuable part of a conference for participants, how would a conference structure, a meeting structure be that would be the most proximate thing to a coffee break? I think that is a very inspiring idea. The gathering idea that you just mentioned, to put conversation, free conversation, not presentation, to the front, and so to liberate conferences of presenting each other, but having actual conversation. And then, of course, the following question would be, what kind of group size do you have to have? How many circles of conversation do you need? And then the idea, of course, that people would suggest the topics. And then the idea to create the right structure, that you need a burning topic, that you need proper invitation. So I think these that's how we found out time-oriented software development, which we will talk about in October probably. Of saying, okay, if ideal process of software development looks very simple, like a coffee break or something, just to use a metaphor, if it looks like that, if usually you only, for example, one of the key insights was that usually good software can be developed by just one or two people. You do not need a team. That was a key insight to this piece of sociotech. So I got from that, okay, then maybe the whole notion of the software development team, which is profound in Agile or team topologies or terrible concepts like that, it's totally flawed. It's just flawed from here to there.
I can't profess Well, I mean,
Teams do not
there's
develop software. It's a very important insight, and what does that mean? And then, of course, the idea was to, okay, what structure could we use if we do not use team structure or self-organization in the team sense, as much? That and I had just researched time so much, so I thought, okay, maybe the structure is time. So what do we need to structure software development time-wise? And so when these ideas come together, then that's when you can create something new, or find out something that should be obvious and describe it afresh, and that's building theory.
Well, I mean, you're developing theory, right? You have this curiosity, and that you do this research around. You talk about doing lots of research on time, right? So you're doing this research and having this. Oh, well, what could possibly be these? You have a wondering, a curiosity that doesn't just say, let's do this now and go forward with it. But there's some thought, there's some restraint from going from I got a harebrained idea to going just doing something right away.
And my experience is also my learning experience. I'm over 50 now, so I did a little bit of studying. And you might be as well close to it, but one of the things that I learned from developing theory, from doing research, is as well that oftentimes, usually you have to read 20, 30 books until something happens, really. So that's why I decided at a certain point to read a lot, buy a lot of books, So when I say I'm researching about time, it's really study. For myself, right? The research is then to try to apply it to a different thing.
Right. And there's what is research?
Exactly.
Are you creating knowledge, or are you doing investigation based on study?
So in a way, it's my research, my personal research, to read the books and to study the stuff. For example, the stuff by Thor Hernes from Copenhagen, about time and organization. It's very interesting, very inspiring. And beyond, I talk about this on our Substacks. But yes, there's this part of, you have to assimilate, I think. You have to assimilate theory, concepts, and so on. And then at a certain point, you might recombine this. And this is how actual innovation happens, to recombine things and
synthesize.
Synthesize them, and then check them against theory again, and look. Has anybody already invented this kind of stuff? Am I just the stupid idiot who's repeating the inside?
Am I in the circle of? Am I smelling my own farts? Am I in the Dunning-Kruger?
Exactly. Or other people's farts? Am I just smelling other people's farts?
Oh my god! But if you have a good,
I think that's part of the work. It's we shouldn't fool ourselves too easily that we have created something new. That's also a disdain for theory. We should always ask ourselves, there must be some theory about that already. There must be some insight. That's why I cherish making books about people like Edward Deming and Peter Drucker and so on. I made the Ernst Weichselbaum book, which we now make wonderful use of developing time-oriented work systems and time-oriented software development. There's a lot of Weichselbaum inside, and of course that it cost me a lot of time. It was a big investment to.
Are you going to have that translate that book eventually? Maybe.
I hope so. I hope we will do it. I don't want to do it because I cannot do it myself. But I hope that we will at some point will have the English translation. Yes.
But again, it's doing research from a lot of different places. You're developing your study, and your practice is based on disciplined study of other thinkers and challenging that thinking yourself, so that you can have a well-informed practice, so that your practice is informed by theory, and so that as a practitioner, you can produce value for people. And I think that's
Also, I think one additional thing we might say about theory is that only theory allows you to distinguish between the nonsense and what's real and what works. Without theory, you don't have a measure. that's, for example, why I cherish principles so much. That's why the BetaCodex has 12 principles, which gives you a theory to distinguish between alpha and beta, what's bureaucratic and what's value creating potentially, and to distinguish even methods, whether methods have value and worth. So without theory, we cannot. We get hypnotized by bollocks, by bullshit,
by MBOs, by OKRs, by team methodologies,
and by all kinds of sloppy ideas that people bring up or throw up in the air. And yeah, theory is what are we without? I'd like to call our today's times. I like to call them quicksand reality. Everything seems to be moving. It's like quicksand, the thing that in a desert you can sink, where you sink in and might die, where you might drown in sand, And of course, we live in this kind of reality where so much fake reality and
people. There's an acceptance of opinion as reality. Right?
Exactly.
There's an uninformed belief from an ideological standpoint, like, ooh, that sounds good, I'm going to believe that. And instead of holding back and having some kind of, God forbid, a thought about something, of your own thought, and not just purchasing your thought from Claude or Chat GPT or whomever, but actually engaging with thought, and not just, oh, hey, this is your opinion, this is that opinion. Now, and I think there's a criticism that has come. It's been a long time since I've heard it about the BetaCodex, that it's just ideology, right? It's just it is dogma. It is this kind of thing. Well, is gravity dogma?
About the BetaCodex? That's very
well. Yeah, well, again, I think
that everything can be questioned. So it's
everything. Well, but I heard that. It's like, Well, there's a way of. And again, it took me a while. And I think it takes, when you're talking about something that really shifts your paradigm, right? I mean, that's a whole other word, but that it's important to question, whoa, what does command and control mean? Why is this Mary Parker Follett person so important? What does Deming have to do with it? Why Russell Acop? I mean, all this kind of stuff is like, wow, where did this come from? And that there is a distinction. It's important to make a distinction between what is real, what produces value in a self-organizing system, and why is a self-organizing system good for organizational effectiveness and thriving in complexity.
Yes. By the way, I welcome critical analysis or critical thinking about beta. However, if you want to criticize beta, it's important to understand alpha, which is something that the BetaCodex also delivers, an understanding of what is alpha, what is Taylorism, what is command and control. And developing that theory, it was really at the heart of socio-technical systems movement, by the way. They, in a way, the socio-technical systems movement invented beta at the time, or found beta, to put it, or discovered it. Yes, they called it, I think System 2 or System 2. Yeah,
System 1 and System 2. Yeah,
I'm not quite sure. I think they called it System 1. System 1 was alpha, System 2 was beta. So that appeared in the 1960s, 1970s, and they had the cases as well. This mining company in England that had discovered System 2.
Oh, yes.
That's where it comes from. So
is that the Eric Trist? Was it the Eric Trist work? Okay.
Yes. So beta didn't fall from the sky either. It was discovered, and the initial theory was built by socio-technical systems movement, then by the Beyond Budgeting movement, of which I was a part, and we have built on top. So to say that that's a dogma or a fetish or whatever, it's
some people saying
very reasonable.
It's like it's this. The thing about folks might take objection to the way it's articulated.
Oh yes, or to the people who articulate
this, not
how
that.
We talk about it.
This, not that. This, not that.
Yes, I understand that people seeking harmony strive. They dislike the this not that distinctions that we use, which I think. Let's put it like this. I think it's helpful to understand, like in democracy, for example. Democracy, you can say one thing you need in democracy is divisions of power. You need three kinds of power: legislative. How is it called in English?
Executive, legislative,
and
judicial.
Judicial. So, division of power, is that the correct word?
Yeah.
You need division of power, not
separation of
unity
powers.
of power, or not kings and queens and kaisers. So to say democracy requires independent institutions, not yeah. That's a helpful thing, and we know, again, that's also a theoretical insight in there. Of course, we know what works in democracy and what doesn't know in democracy, or what democracy is opposed to. That it's opposed to authoritarianism, and what characterizes freedom of press. Not we can say this about democracy, and we should do the same with organizations. That's the whole idea of the BetaCodex, to distinguish alpha from beta. That's everything. And of course, everybody. This is very important to understand. Everybody has the freedom to opt for alpha. We stop nobody from doing command and control.
No,
System alpha bullshit.
Well, but that's the thing is you're drawing the distinction that some folks don't know. It's ignorance, but it's not judgment.
It's a distinction for theory. That's, I think, what it is, right? And that's okay as well. It's an interesting choice to choose to be ignorant and remain ignorant. It's a very interesting choice. Nobody has the obligation to be educated, to be intelligent, or to make intelligent choices and to learn. People are not obliged to do that. So.
Well, there's an idea that I keep on. And when that's the thing, the premise of the BetaCodex, again, one of them, not the only one. I wouldn't presume to know it, but it's a criticism, right? It's a criticism of the way management technologies, or management as a social technology, has failed to serve human thriving.
Sure. Right?
But it's like this is a system of being and doing with a practice within organizations that has created harm, especially in this world that has become faster and faster, more complex since 1970 or so. But this is, again, it's an example of theory being appropriate for the time. But there's a time that kind of observation can be made. The world changed around us. The environment has changed.
But it's worth highlighting that the BetaCodex, we have learned to understand the roots of all assumptions in beta. I think we have developed a very thorough understanding. That's why we are doing this. Is the 74th episode of this podcast. Yes. Of course, it's a beautiful way to spend time together for us, but also we try to, go to the roots of everything. For example, human nature assumptions, psychology. So we talked about Marcus McGregor, but we also mentioned, Mr. Frankl,
Viktor Frankl,
or
Peter Kestenbaum.
Exactly, or Peter Kostenbaum, exactly. So we can trace all the roots, all the assumptions, or why is decentralization? Where is it rooted in systems theory? Where does it come from? Why is it crucial to understand in org design to understand decentralization first? Or how do social dynamics work out? That's why it's important to trace all this to Kurt-Lewin, the social technical movements. And we have done this kind of homework, and it's fascinating, of course.
Well, I think the homework too also comes from what does it take to better understand alpha? And to call alpha and to recognize it.
Exactly. It's very important to understand alpha and to appreciate it. That's why I'm a big fan of Frederick Taylor's, in a way. That's why I went to his where he's buried, he was he created theory about organizations.
Yeah. Well, it was in a time when there was a rampant lack of structure. And there was relatively no knowledge about how work was done.
So he did the groundwork. And it's a little bit like Sigmund Freud totally new. Of course, he wasn't the first. He had his teachers, even Mr. Adler. I'm not sure about his first name. So there were teachers of Freud, but people like Freud, his circuits, let's say, they did the groundwork of psychology and psychoanalysis. Of course, today we consider much of it wrong. Much of it wasn't good theory. But those people who found the founders of a field, they necessarily will put some not so good straws, and develops theory that then turns out not to be robust. That's happened.
I mean, it has to be subject to criticism.
One of the few people, I think, who didn't suffer that is Kurt Lewin, who created, I dare to say, he created the field of social psychology. And I read a lot about him and of him, and I do not see many mistakes in his theories. It's surprising. I think it's a marvelous thing. Somebody who is the founder of a field, or Niklas Luhmann and others in systems theory. Stafford Beal, it's a different piece of cake. I think he erred with everything. But people like Niklas Luhmann, oh my God, he nailed so many things, immediately. Brilliant minds, Those are, and Mary Parker Follett, the same, right?
Yeah.
I think she understood so many phenomena and described them so accurately. It's astonishing. They are the beautiful minds,
We would be here in 2025. The world would be a much different place if Mary Parker Follett were I don't know, but elevated. If her thinking was adopted and understood and propagated the same way Deming was.
By the way, there's a guy who's trying to organize a conference in Boston next year. Have you seen that? Matthew
Shapiro. I would like to have Matthew on our show.
Oh yes, we should have a conversation with him. Great idea. Yeah. Yes. Can you invite him? He's on the East Coast as well. Yes,
I will definitely do it. He probably won't want to come in at 6 a.m. like I do, but
no, we can do it a little later. But he just founded an institute or something like that, Mary Parker Follett Institute. Interesting stuff. We have to talk with him. And creating theory is tough work, and creating theory that lasts, it's the most amazing stuff. I mean, if you look at Einstein's relativity theory, creating something that holds up for 100 years, 99 years now, wasn't it 26? Not sure.
Well, and there's quantum theory and chaos theory and all that stuff is
directly from it. That's
but it's it's evolutionary, right? I think that to assume that theory, and again, you talked about it with Freud. I mean, to assume that theory is stuck is dangerous.
That's if I may add a personal note, that's my ambition for the BetaCodex movement, and the BetaCodex as theory has always been to build around it, to build upon it, to make it evolve. That's why I find it so thrilling to extend it to Lean, to extend it to agile software development or software development. Or that's also why Silke and I she developed Myself at Work, and a psychometric diagnostic based on the Big Five personality model. We try to, and where BetaCodex notions, self-organization notions, were firmly embedded in that diagnostic. So we try to to connect the dots, and research the edges, which are of course also things like organizational democracy, organizational transformation that's fast and that works. That's why the open space beta approach was a big breakthrough. And our ambition should be to strive for evolving the theory, of course, and that's a tough bet. The easy thing is to build a business around beta, but and I think we should do that. We should try to make a living from beta, not from command and control stuff. And also to evolve the theory. Yes, our YouTube channel.
Yes, our YouTube channel. And the other thing that we were talking about, I don't have yours in here, but we do have a Substack as well for News from the Beta World, which there's a difference there. And you're writing specifically where this article came from Red 42 and in the consulting domain.
Yes, the article we discussed today was published on the Red 42 Substack, nielspflaeging.substack.com. But my idea is that we
cross-pollinate, integrate them.
Yes, and I would like to invite you and everybody who's listening as well to contribute content to this Substack that you just showed the address, because the idea of the BetaCodex Substack is that everybody can write and publish. On the Red 42 one, I want to be the exclusive, or Silk and I want to be the owners of the content, or the writers, so to speak. But the idea of the BetaCodex Substack is that everybody's things can be published, and we published a piece by Ian Glenday there, and so on. Much more things are going to happen.
Much more coming. Well, we are coming up at the time where I would like to stay for another half hour, but it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and life is starting to happen here in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Let's have a coffee as well.
Yeah. Oh well, my coffee. The coffee happens at 4 o'clock.
Good.
So it's
at 4 o'clock. Oh my God, that's
a
decent rhythm. I suppose you do get a lot of research work done at that time.
Of course, right. And today, actually, very, very, see in writing here. I did the writing about the article today. I would like to end this our episode today. Again, already grieving the loss of our time. That would be grieving the loss of Niels in my life in this moment. But is that there's nothing as practical as good theory.
Yes.
Nothing as practical as good theory, which is
theory is Levine, right? It's not theory or practice. The only purpose of theory is to make it worthwhile in practice, to apply it to practice. Which is why I'm so happy that soon enough I can talk about time-oriented software development with you, and I'm looking forward to get your opinion about the theory we developed for that. It's still a secret, but publication is dawning. It will happen in October.
The next white paper. Yes, the next white paper. And the white papers continue to come, and you can look at the body. See?
This is a big year for the BetaCodex network, in fact, yes. It will be the 5th research paper this year. So that's a lot for our movement. It's the 26th since 2008. This is the best.
Very productive year for research in beta.
And also, it's the first time we are involving Sebastian Kupsch from Pratke, CTO.
And we have again beta the world over again in Argentina.
Yes.
Of course, with Ernesto, who would love to have here as well. Ernesto, come on.
Oh yes, we have to have a conversation with Ernesto. Oh yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, I should invite him. That's something.
Yes. Well,
of course. The thing about having Ernesto is he can do some jamming during the conversation as well, because he's a real guitarist, and you are a real musician too. So you too. Yeah. Jamming together is a little bit tough, I think. Through.
It is notoriously bad when you try to jam. You can be.
You can jam separately.
We could jam separately in that. Yeah. So, you're also speaking somewhere here pretty soon, aren't you? In Prague or
Serbia, Belgrade. Regional Scrum gathering in Belgrade is getting close. It will be on the 7th of November, and I will speak there about what if we hadn't really tried Agile yet.
Because when I saw you speaking at a Scrum conference, I'm like, what are you going to say to those folks? Considering how you have been rather critical, a little bit critical of Scrum, just a little.
I'm not critical. I would say I'm not critical of Scrum.
Bad Scrum.
But I'm critical about disdain for theory among Scrum, in the Scrum or Agile community. And that it hasn't evolved. That's why I might suggest at the conference to call as a nickname to call time-oriented software development Scrum Plus. Well, Scrum
like,
Plus,
like Disney Plus or
Scrum Timely Plus, Timely Scrum or something like that.
It is a time for Scrum, a time for all Scrums, a time for all seasons.
Exactly. But of course, talking about time-oriented software development will only be part of the story. But I think it's true. We haven't really tried Agile yet.
Yeah,
we are fooling ourselves.
I also before we hit it, I want to say thank you. I don't know if she's still watching. My friend Susan Hasty, she put a couple comments in here that were very interesting.
Thank you. Wonderful.
And so we can go to YouTube and read the comments. like and subscribe. Everybody like and subscribe on YouTube, Briefing with Ryan, as well as the BetaCodex Network. Follow us on LinkedIn. All the stuff is going to be in the description for the videos. Blah, 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 the things we on YouTube have to do. So with that, my dear friend, say goodbye to the fine folks out there.
Thanks for the
in
conversation.
the
The next one will be the 75th, so celebratory edition, so to speak. We will think about a little surprise there.
Ooh, the 75th anniversary of BetaCodex Live. So, all right. See everybody. Ending.